Hi, it's Penny here, and today we're going to be putting together my TBR for the month of September. Now, usually I try to, at least for a few of my reading picks, use my TBR Machine website that spits out random reading prompts. But this month I'm going to put that aside because I really want to focus on the Orilium Readathon. I've actually participated in this readathon for many years, but usually I have other stuff going on as well, which means that I end up doing badly in it. However, the spring semester, which annoyingly is in autumn in the southern hemisphere, but anyway, I actually managed to complete that one. So if I can complete this one, I can finally count myself as a novice alchemist in the Orilium world. So if you don't know about this readathon, it's quite complicated. I'll link G's announcement down below, but there are different magical jobs that you can be training for at this school, this magical school, and for each field that you're training in, there are different classes that you need to take. And in the spring semester, no, it's the autumn semester, but it's spring in the southern hemisphere. Anyway, very confusing for me, but I'll manage. Anyway, in the end of year semester, there's also different levels for each class. So some classes you only need to do the basics, so like read one book for one reading prompt, but for other classes you have to read like 3 books for 3 different reading prompts. Anyway, because I am that kind of person, I've always wanted to do the Alchemist calling. That does mean for the second semester reading 14 books. However, I've come up with a plan. It does mean I'm going to be reading at least half of these as graphic novels. I don't care, it's not cheating. I don't think you can cheat at reading prompts because the whole point is to be creative about how you fulfill it. So anyway, as well, I am still going to try and keep with my idea of a realistic TBR where for each week I'm picking a physical book and an audiobook to read. I will also have, as I said, a bunch of graphic novels. Those are easy to get through, so I'm not too worried about fitting them into the realistic reading plans. And actually, before I get into the Orilium reading prompts, actually I need to move over so we have room for the thing over here. Before we get into that, I will say, do I normally put it on this side or this side? Now I don't remember. Anyway, before I get into the Orilium Readathon prompts, I do have one book that I need to put on here already because I am doing a whole Cosmere reread, although it's no longer a reread because I'm now up to books that I haven't read before, which is very exciting. So at the end of the month, I do want to start Rhythm of War. I expect that it will spill over into October, but if I want to keep on track for getting to Wind and Truth by the end of the year, then we need to pick up Rhythm of War. This is the 4th book in the Stormlight Archives, which is a very big epic fantasy that I always I just give up on explaining the plot. If you're on BookTube, you've probably heard about it. I'm excited to be continuing because I do feel like through my reread of the Cosmere, I'm now so much more prepared to go into Rhythm of War. Anyway, that will be the physical book for the last week in the month. Now as I go through the Orilium Readathon prompts, what I'm going to do is start out first with the classes where I just have to read one book for one prompt. So the first class will be Animal Studies, and the prompt that I need to fulfill is the Phoenix Keeping prompt. So basically it is to read a book with a phoenix on the cover or phoenix in the title. Now, already we're struggling because I had a look at a lot of phoenix books and I'm just not interested in any of them. So I'm going to read a book that I'm not really that interested in reading, but it's a graphic novel, so it should be quick. I'm going to read Phoenix Endsong, which is a Marvel comic about the character Phoenix. I do think of all the Marvel characters, Phoenix is one I find really interesting. She's kind of a bit darker than some of the other characters. And so maybe I'll even read this and then want to read more Marvel comics. I kind of doubt it, but that's where we're going to start with for Animal Studies. Then we have Astronomy class where we're learning about the Cradle constellation, and the prompt is to read a book that was released on your birth month. Now, I was born in April, and this is another hard one because books aren't often released in April, okay? Some people are going to have this very easy because books tend to be released more in certain months. But one book I found that was released in April, and even April this year, is a Dragon Fruit. I've forgotten the author's name. No, won't know how to say this. Micah Lucia. So I believe the author is a Pacific Islander, and that's what made me excited to read it because if you know how I run my statistics, I often try and get closer to having the distribution of author ethnicity similar to the distribution of ethnicity in New Zealand. However, that always falls down because I have really struggled to find fantasy or science fiction books written by Pacific Islanders, and there's a lot of Pacific Islanders in New Zealand, or at least a much higher percentage than what I'm reading. So finding a Pacific Islander authored fantasy novel is exciting. I will admit, I think this is a little bit YA and maybe even a little bit more romance focused than I would typically like, but it does also have dragons in it. So I've forgotten the plot. It's something like, can I even explain it? Do I even remember it well enough to explain it? Something like these dragon eggs get found, and if you take it and eat it, maybe, you can have a wish granted, and then this girl has one, but it was meant to go to someone else, and so she feels guilty about that. I feel like I'm totally getting this wrong, but regardless, something to do with dragons. And I'm really interested to see how it explores the themes that I think it's going to touch on. Then the next class I need to do is Restoration. So in this one, the subject is Night Dew, and the prompt is to read a book with the night sky on the cover. And for this, I'm going to read Descender Volume 4 is what I've written down on my notes, but maybe that gives away to you that the rest of the Descender books are also going to be on this TBR. So actually, this t-shirt is a Descender t-shirt, but the other day when I was reading my other Descender t-shirt, I thought to myself, I should do a reread of Descender. And I had that in my mind when I started looking at the Orilium prompts, and so conveniently, I was able to fulfill a lot of prompts with Descender books. I think just the first 4 though, so there are 6. We'll see if I actually get through the whole series. I'd kind of like to. In the Descender series, basically these giant robots turn up and just like kill off a bunch of humans, humans now being spread out across space. In retaliation, the humans then start culling off the robots, even though humans are very reliant on robots at this point, so that has its own consequences. And we're primarily following this young companion robot who has been separated from his family and is just trying to figure out what's going on and find his brother, his human brother. It's a really emotional story and I really love it, and I'm super excited to have an excuse to reread it. Then we have Demonology class, and the subject for this is the unfamiliars. So the prompt is for someone who doesn't read for fun to pick a book for you. My partner Jace doesn't like to read, so I gave him a selection of 6 books that I would like to read on audiobook sometime soon, and he picked One Dark Window, which was interesting. It's not what I thought he would pick, but that's what we got. This is one which I read the first chapter during the series try a chapter project that I'm doing, where I'm trying the first chapter of every series that I'm interested in, that I have not been making as much progress on as I would like, but hopefully I'll get back into it now that we've moved and I've gotten over all that drama. Have I? Not really, it's still affecting my life and my reading, but we're getting there. Anyway, One Dark Window follows this young girl who had this illness, and now it seems like as a result, maybe, she has this like demon. Is it a demon? I don't know. She has this voice in her head, and I think maybe there's going to be some kind of weird romance with the voice in the head. Maybe I'm making that up. I do think this does have a romantasy aspect, which maybe would make you question why I want to read this, but honestly I just found the first chapter to be really intriguing, and just the way this young girl was struggling to work out her family situation and dealing with this voice in her head, it just all seemed very interesting. So we're going to give it a go. It is only a duology, so that makes me feel like it's less of a commitment starting it and trying it, so we'll see. Okay, then there's a couple of classes where I have to read 2 books for them. Firstly, we have Spells and Incantations. The first subject is the Dancing Stars charm, so you need to read a book that is a 5-star prediction, and I'm going to read Volume 1 of Descender. Now maybe this isn't so much a prediction as a knowledge, because I have previously read it and I know that it will be 5 stars for me, but like, the best prediction is something that's a sure bet, right? So I'm going to go with Descender Volume 1. And then the second subject for Spells and Incantations is the Memory Clip spell. This one is to read a book that G has mentioned in one of her videos, and conveniently, I initially read Descender because of G's recommendation. So I'm going to read volume 2 of Descender for that prompt. And then we only need to find somewhere to put volume 3, which will be coming up. Then we have law class, and the first subject is, I think it's Illyrian history, which I think is like, G has built this amazing magical world all around this readathon, and I think Illyrian is one of the races that's kind of like vampires. Anyway, the prompt is to read a vampire book. And I found the cutest graphic novel for this. I'm going to read Garlic and the Vampire. Honestly, just some little garlic person meeting a vampire, I assume. I don't know. Super cute cover. That's mainly what I picked it on. It says vampire in the title, so we know it's got to have vampires. It's just a nice, easy way to fulfill this prompt. And then the second subject for law class is regional interpretation, I think. But the idea is to read a translated book. And for this, I'm going to read I Who Have Never Known Men. I actually don't know the authors of any of these books off by heart. Jacqueline Harpman, and translated by Roz Schwartz. So this is a story about, I think it's like all these women who are trapped somewhere or like imprisoned somewhere, and they've never been out in the world or something, and you don't really know why. And I guess the book is kind of about learning a little bit about these women and what's going on. I've heard lots of really good things, especially Emily Fox recommends it, so I'm hoping I will love it. Also, this is a short one, and we are still really trying to make this reading plan realistic, right? So short is good. Then there are also 2 classes where I need to take 3 different subjects, or like 3 different levels. And of course, the first class is Alchemy, because you need to take Alchemy class if you're going to be an alchemist. So the first subject is Chemical Breakdown, and for this you need to read a book that will make you emotional, and you know what we're fitting in here? Descender Volume 3. Volume 3 definitely has my most favorite character, Driller, who is this drilling robot, and I love him so much. Any mention of him is going to make me emotional, but also just the whole journey that this young robot goes on is emotional, so it'll fit for that. Then the next subject is Component Reconstruction, and for this you need to read a book that was traditionally published after having been self-published. I really wanted to read for this Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. However, because it is now being traditionally published, it's actually currently not available. So I put it on my TBR, I think, when it was purely self-published. And now I come to a time, I've heard it's been traditionally published now, and I'm like, oh cool, I do want to pick that book up now. And I can't, because the traditionally published editions aren't quite out until I think October. So that's very frustrating. But another book I did find that I wanted to read that fulfills this requirement is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. Now, I have a bit of a strange relationship with Olivia Blake. There have been at least 2 things I think that I have liked by her, or at least liked to some degree. There's also been some other things that I almost liked but then didn't quite like, and I'm honestly not sure if Olivia Blake's writing is really for me, but I do really like her as a person. One for My Enemy, I think, is kind of like a mafia retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but with a magical element, I assume. Anyway, I've heard lots of good things about it, although mostly from people who I think like romantasy better than me. But I think even if I don't like it, I do enjoy Olivia Blake talking about her writing, so this would at least mean another book where I could listen to anything where she's talked about that book and kind of hear about the way that she thinks about the themes, even if when I'm reading it I don't understand it in the way that she's trying to present it. Anyway, I'm interested to try it, and it does fulfill the prompt. Then the last prompt for Alchemy is Culinary Transmutation. For this you need to read a book with food on the cover, which I have this prompt in my TBR machine, and it is really hard. Like, I can hardly ever find books on my shelves with food on the cover. But you know how I had Garlic and the Vampire? Well, there's another book in that series called Garlic and the Witch. I'm going to read that as well. Just another super cute way to get some of these prompts done. Okay, then the last class we need to cover is Inscription. For this as well, I need to read 3 different books. So firstly, we have Art of Decipher. So this you need to read a book where the title has all the letters of your first name. My name is Penny, P-E-N-E. That P makes this a difficult prompt. However, I was going to read in August One Fell Sweep, the 3rd book in the Innkeeper Chronicles by Alona Andrews, but I was also behind my reading in August, so I decided why not put that one back till September, because it perfectly fits this prompt. We've got the P at the end, we got 2 E's and the N in the one, so perfect. It fulfills the prompt. Also, I'm excited about continuing that series. It is a series following this woman named Dina, who works at this inn, but it's an inn where, or it's a world where all the supernatural creatures of the world are actually aliens, and they stop and stay at these inns whenever they're traveling through Earth, because Earth is not allowed to know about the rest of the space goings on. So the idea is they stay at the inns where the innkeepers will keep them safe, but also keep humans safe from these supernatural creatures. I just really love Ilona Andrews' way of writing. These books are kind of quite humorous and action-packed, which doesn't sound like something I would often like, but I like Ilona Andrews' humor, and I like the way that she does action, like just mixing it really well with the plot and the character development. So I am excited to continue the series. Then the next inscription prompt is ink pigmentation, and for this you need to spin like a color wheel to get the color of the title of the book. So I have cheated slightly, but I'm not mad at myself. I've made a little color wheel that has not many colors on it, because basically there are 6 kind of newish releases that I would like to read the audiobooks of, and these are the colors of the titles. So we're going to pick one of those books using this. So I guess let's just spin it and see what we get. What does that actually say? Oh, it's right on the line between black and blue, but we got black. Let me check my notes. I don't remember what book that is. Okay, so that is 17 Years Later by J.P. Pomare, who is a New Zealand author who writes thrillers. Now, I don't often like thrillers. However, the ones that I have read by J.P. Pomare, I've ended up really enjoying. So this one is his latest release, and I am excited to give it a go. I really know nothing about the plot, but I think that's the best way to go into it. So then, the last prompt. The last prompt is actually the one I had the most problem with. It is called Credit Etiquette, and the idea is that you look at the acknowledgements of books you've read recently that you gave 5 stars, and then you find somewhere where another author's name is mentioned and you read a book by one of those authors. Firstly, I don't have access to a lot of the books that I've rated 5 stars recently because I've borrowed them from the library or whatever. And so even finding out if there are acknowledgements that mention authors is difficult. But also, I do have some of them on my shelf, and I checked them and they don't even mention other authors. They just mention like their families and their editors and people involved in the publishing process and their readers, all that kind of stuff. But they're not thanking other authors. So I tried really hard to find a book that would fit this prompt, and I was honestly feeling like maybe I would just have to give up on this whole readathon because I couldn't match this prompt. However, then I actually watched G's announcement, and she saved me. So she's doing this new thing where you can use your guild points that you've been earning throughout previous readathons. You can use them to buy things from the guild emporium, or like you kind of don't really buy them, you just to yourself make a note that some of your points are gone and now you have this other thing. And one of the things you can buy are scrolls to deal with prompts that aren't going the way you want them. You can buy for 15 points the scroll of replacement, which lets you replace a prompt with any book you want. So that's what I'm going to do, because otherwise I just couldn't do this prompt, you know? So another book that I really wanted to get on my month's reading is The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie, because this is the last book in the Age of Madness trilogy, which I have been reading. In fact, it's the last book that has been published in the First Law world, which I think I started reading with Becca and the Books' Backlist book club. Is that what her book club's called? Catch-up book club? Anyway, been reading it with that, along with that book club, and so I want to read it, and let's fit it on the TBR here. It's kind of a grimdark series. The second trilogy is set in like a industrial revolution type fantasy world. Joe Abercrombie always writes stories where the characters are very morally grey and make a lot of bad decisions and usually end up right back where they started. But I have, I kind of preferred the First Law trilogy, but I kind of liked the way the second book in the second trilogy ended, so I'm excited to see where the third book will take things. I will also mention here, there is another short story anthology that is set in the same world that has been released. From what I can see online, it's been released, but also from what I can see online, there is no way to access it. in New Zealand. So, like, unless I hack things around a little bit, which generally I'm against doing, because when you do that, then it kind of discourages publishers from setting up their New Zealand publishing properly, because they don't think there's a market here, because everyone who wants to read things from here is already getting them anyway, so what's the point in setting up your New Zealand industry properly? It's all very frustrating, and there's also been a couple of audiobooks recently that I have realized are released in America but have not been released, and I think probably other parts of the world as well, but have not been released in New Zealand, so poo to the rest of you, basically. Anyway, that was a tangent, but I think I've talked about all the books that I'm planning to read this month. So I have a bunch of graphic novels, pretty much just 4 Descender ones, 2 Garlic ones, and 1 random Marvel one, and then I've managed to fill up my 8 books for the month of September. So let me know if you've read any of these books, if you think I'm going to like them, and let me know if you are also participating in the Orilium Readathon and what your calling is if you are. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.